Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to season 2 of the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kayla Smith, CEO of the Hormone Puzzle Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and the business of coaching, creator of the Hormone Puzzle Method, an infertility warrior, 2-time boy mom, and women's health expert. This podcast is for women struggling with infertility, painful periods, terrible PMS, or really just any symptom of hormone imbalance that they are ready to eliminate for good. Tune in weekly as we interview amazing experts in the fields of women's health, breaking down those hormone walls, nerding out on nutrition, and having way too much fun. Whether you're beginning your journey or you've been struggling for years, we're going to finally help you put those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together so that you can get pregnant and eliminate those pesky symptoms for good. Are you ready? This season is packed with even more expert guests sharing groundbreaking knowledge, giving you that jolt of energy that you so desperately need, sending you lots of virtual hugs, and inspiring you to take your fertility into your own hands and make that baby. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now let's get started on your road to transformation. On today's show, I have Dr. Julie Vaughn, a Manhattan-based holistic doctor specializing in fertility, who merged her medical education with intuitive-based practices. The method she developed, called spiritual fertility, expresses her unique capacity and experience within both reproductive medicine and medical intuition. The energetic and intuitive work she shares is grounded in real clinical and medical experience. Julie's work has been called eloquent, mystical, and practical. Her most sincere desire is to help individuals to connect to the spirits of their children while guiding them to earth in the most gentle and loving ways. This show, we're going to talk all about spirituality and your fertility, and how you can call your spirit baby into your womb, and how to connect to your mind, body, and spirit while walking your fertility journey. Now, without further ado, I would love to welcome Dr. Julie to the show. Hey, Dr. Julie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Yes, me too. So tell us a little bit more about you, how you started working in women's health and with fertility.
Sure. Well, I was called to be a healer from the very beginning. So I knew that I was going to work somehow in medicine. And I ended up through my own health and my own path, kind of diverging into holistic medicine, which was one of the best things that ever happened to me in general, actually, to be able to look at things from the alternative perspective and get answers that weren't presented to me from the conventional medical system at that set, especially then. We have a lot more options than we did even, 20 years ago. But the short answer of how I started treating fertility and women's health is that I didn't choose, it chose me. When I moved to New York City, I'm from Texas originally, and I moved to New York City to start practicing in the mid 2000s. And almost instantly, I was starting to see fertility cases in my practice. And I learned that not only was I passionate about it, I see it as an extension of, feminism, really, to help support people, especially given the fact that from my perspective, a lot of the things that go wrong or problematic when in the fertility journey, and also in hormonally caused disease or chronic disease, has so much to do with industrialization, stress of the economy, the unfairness, and to a huge degree, sort of the unintended consequences of the sexual revolution, right? So women have always kind of gotten the short end of the deal, and we really my joy is helping support people and finding the root cause and bringing it all back to the center of how what's going wrong actually can be the messenger for how to change their life and how to for a different path to unfold. So I was fortunate, honestly, and I also am very passionate about it and love it. And I was able then to go on and study a more advanced level. I went to China and studied in hospital there, how they treat infertility and gynecological disease in hospital in China, and spent just a lot of time here in New York City working with all the integrative doctors and working with Western fertility doctors and clinics. So really had some great on the ground training in the 21st century in New York City. So I've just, short answer is it kind of, it chose me.
Oh, I love that. I find that that's similar to a lot of us, it's our journey and it's kind of what we know. And so it kind of chooses us. So I love that. And I would love to know, how is it different in China compared to here? Like how they practice?
Sure. Well, it's one thing that happened. So Chinese medicine is a crazy long, old system of many different schools and many different practices and ways of thinking about how to heal. And so what happened in the 60s with Maoism is that all of the kind of old independent schools, think of it like massage, like people come from this school of massage or Swedish or Thai or different things. And so Mao came in and he basically unified everything into one form of traditional Chinese medicine, the TCM, that's taught pretty much everywhere. And so he also did this with the written language, with characters and in the language. And this is how he made dramatic changes. So he increased the literacy rate of China tremendously, very quickly. But this is also how he kind of systemized Chinese medicine, which he was very fond of. And he put a department within every hospital in China has a significant and important integrated TCM department. So you'll see on floors there, you'll see herbalist coming in, trying and writing prescriptions that are used in the treatment of fibroids or postpartum bleeding or cancers, all kinds of things. It's just integrated right into the clinic and into the hospital.
I love that. I wish we did more of that here because I pull a lot of Chinese medicine into my practice and just, holistic health, getting down to that root and looking at the body as a whole, which I find is so fascinating. In other cultures, that's what they do. But here we have a specialist for everything. And it's like we're seeing the body in different parts and forms when it's really all connected. And so I love that. Yeah. So talk to me a little more about spiritual fertility. I know you talk in your book about bringing the spirit into it and even calling our spirit baby into our wombs. So talk to us a little more about that. What does that mean? And how do we start to do that?
Yes, in my book, I mean, the most personal way I can talk about it is with the story that I began my book with, which was my own awareness of my daughter's energy. And it happened when I was about 17 and I was driving, through, my ancestors are from West Texas. So I was driving through West Texas and I had a vision of her and it struck me so clearly, and I've always been a little bit of an interesting kid, I've always had a side of me that's creative and I've been writing my whole life. I believe in creativity and the magical. I'm also a Southern Baptist preacher's daughter. So I've been tuned in to, interesting forces all my life, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I looked over at her. I clearly saw her in this vision. I looked over at her and she turned to me and she said, "Hey, Mom." And I knew instantly that I was going to have this only child daughter. And I do. She's almost 10. Oh. But it was, I had no doubt afterward that this was the connection that was coming in for me. And I had just a lot of allegiance to her at that point, and and how her path's unfolded ever since then. But so it tends to be one of the things that I I've tried to put my finger on why. I do have this gift, and I've been able to help people really connect, and have and hear sometimes the encouragement that they need from the spirit world, so to speak, or just what I kind of think about more as just the non-material, or the energy that's just not here yet. So it's very much a part of the way I like to bring my clients along the journey of fertility. And ultimately, the goal is, and this is why I wrote the book Spiritual Fertility, is so people have the tools that I've learned over the years to implement themselves, so they don't need me to hear that spirit. They don't need me to hear that little voice. They then are able to do it, on their own. And that's really the goal of all healing, is really about, at the end of the day, empowering people to be able to pick it up on their own and not need someone else to help them. But while people do need help, that has been my job for some time.
Yeah. And is that something that you tapped into, or she just came to you? Or was it something where you were, you said you were driving, so I don't think you were meditating with your eyes closed.
No, I think it really, I was alone, and I was on a bit of a spirit quest. I was a young woman, and I graduated from high school early, and I was trying to find my path, and I was driving through, again, like the land of my ancestors. So there's definitely, one of the tips and tools I talk about and I use in my book is connection and talking to ancestors. And I think about it and talk about it in two different ways. One is the positive side of it, which is how they're on the other side and they're able to help herald in, or to help guide energy in. But I also talk about it from the role and perspective of transgenerational trauma. And this is one thing that I really, with clarity, was able to see in New York City, because here in New York City, 10% of the population, 11% of the population is of Jewish descent. So, and many, just because of time frame, many of the patients who I ended up seeing had grandparents who were in concentration camps or survived displacement and very hardcore experiences. And so I started to look at the correlation between the intensity of trauma of ancestors and how that shows up in the endocrine system of their, their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And there's a lot of interesting stuff there on all sides, Western science, more energetic science and medicine too. So that sometimes it's a part of that journey to look at both sides of that and to help go in and do some clearing and communication with this kind of what can sometimes be disguised traumas or hidden traumas or unspoken traumas, things that are sort of, known, but maybe not even spoken about in the family. And there's a lot of that, actually. Yes. So, for sure. And a lot of that around fertility, abortions or adoptions or things that are, just people don't want to speak about. And so you end up getting into a place of thinking like, wow, this is happening to me. It's never happened to anyone before. And that's not necessarily true. It's just, was it spoken of? Was it shared?
Right. And so what would you say to the non-believers out there?
Absolutely. I think I wrote this in my introduction of my book, like even the tools that I wrote in my book that I describe and that I've shared with people, I've worked with, atheists. And it doesn't, for me, and this is one thing that's really beautiful about the, when somebody is the space of trying to, when you're not getting pregnant when you want to, it is a really amazing opportunity. A space opens up that doesn't open up at any other time in your life for healing, for contemplation, for looking at not only your physical body, but your job, your relationship, your history, your memory, your living environment. Everything comes to the surface as like, I need to reevaluate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a wonderful window, and I find that people are quite open, even if they are non-believers. They'll start to look at things and analyze things in new ways. So in that regard, I feel like I try to just give people. There's a story in my book, actually, of a client I had who grew up very much in a very kind of commune, very hippie 1970s Oregon, home birth, all kinds. Her mom was like an astrologer or something like that, right? And she left early to go study like physics. Like she totally did it 180 away from everything she was raised with. But then as she had early onset infertility and had to start, she went back to a lot of tools to try and figure out like, what can I do? She turned back around to start looking at things that she had run away from, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And one of the exercises that we used, because we were trying to really just rebuild her own faith in the universe, basically. And it doesn't even mean in any of the things that she came from or any of the things that I even suggest. So one of the tools that I gave her was called a synchronicity journal. And I had her literally just start keeping a diary of things that were happening with some synchronicity. And I remember I gave it to her and she called me like the next day and was thrilled because she was listening to I think it was like a Bob Marley song, the one with like the little birds sitting on the window.
Yeah.
And at that same time, 2 little birds came and sat on her window. And
gosh.
She was like, I see it. And so this actually helped her construct her own meaning, her own sort of spirituality and I'll tell you the reason why this is important, which is the whole reason of spiritual fertility isn't to convert you into being some sort of true believer, right? It's just, it's my way of helping take the stress and pressure off the individual's endocrine system, the pituitary hypothalamus, all the things that bang down with stress on the endocrine system. Mm-hmm. And by giving people tools to think on the expansive level, to just like lighten the burden of thinking that it all comes down to what they do, what they say, what they've done wrong, what they eat, what supplements they take, So that's the difference between the sympathetic nervous system being on and the parasympathetic system being on. Which I call, the expansive versus the contracted. And this is pretty much the core of all my work, is that what is expansive and what is contracted. And how do we then start to live and then recognize patterns on both sides, right? And make choices.
For sure. I love that. And I talk about that a lot in my practice. I feel like so much of fertility is about what can I do? Like you said, like, what do I need to eat? What supplements do I need to take? Like, let's do. And that's very masculine energy. And it's very like, you're doing all the time, but let's just sit and be. Let's tap into that feminine energy. Let's open our minds to the spirit world and just be. So I love that you say that. And so how do we do that? How do we just be and tap into that feminine energy?
It's a great question. And I think the word that comes to mind, or a couple words that comes to mind for me today, is to give ourselves permission to, right? Number one, I think the first exercise, each chapter in my book has an exercise at the end. And the first chapter is what I call the golden passport exercise. And it's really, I was sitting with a really beautiful and amazing woman years ago who was in her early 20s and really wanted to have a child because it was a pressure in her family, and it was a difficult thing for her. She wasn't quite ready, but she had a lot of family pressure. Also, she was affluent, and her kind of like, it was a part of how she would ensure her kind of role in this big kind of powerful family. It was expected of her. She was also very polite, very much just a really good girl, you know?
Yeah.
And I was just trying to find a way to keep on supporting her and making decisions for herself instead of everyone else who just had were just playing such a major role in her life. You know, her voice was small compared to everybody else's voice. And I had a piece of like golden paper on my desk, and I was like, I wrote her name on it. And I was like, this is your golden passport. This is it. Like, I am giving it to you. I'm like, all the power in the universe is coming through it. And you have permission now to leave any circumstance, conversation, situation, any of it that feels contracted, but that puts you into a place of either thinking negatively about where you're at in your fertility journey, or negatively about your own health or your power, your capability. And so she really took it to heart, and she came back and told me how she was in like these conversations, and you know, before that she would stay in, and that would really bother her or get her into like a very stressful place, and how she had just like turned around and left, started leaving conversations, stopped answering the phone, stopped doing. And it was, so that is an example of how we start doing it. Is now we have to first identify what the contraction is, what those triggers are. There's a great saying, the triggers are the guides. Your triggers are your guides, right?
Right.
And it's truly, I guess that's something I've really learned in my own life, is how to pay attention to the triggers and then respect them for how they a lot of the times are leftovers from trauma, but also how I have choice to start navigating how I heal and move away from those places of suffering, right? This becomes very Buddhist, but it is true, even there from the Buddhist perspective, that being born a human ensures suffering, but it's also like the way that we can change and evolve spiritually. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about myths. Do you ever hear about any myths around spiritual fertility? Maybe one or two that we want to kind of debunk today?
Oh, no one's ever asked me that question. It's interesting. I've done my fair share of interviews and podcasts, but no one's ever talked to me about debunking the myths of it. I think, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think that there's certainly you working we work in the same field, and sort of one of the first things that comes to mind for me is not so much myths, but narratives, kind of like really common narratives, you know?
Yeah. I hear a lot that, well, I'm not, I'm a non-believer. So that is kind of woo woo. Like, I don't necessarily know if I, believe in calling my spirit baby in. Like, I talk a lot about manifestation and visualization and all of that. And sometimes I'll get pushback, like, does that really work? That's not really true. So that's one that I'm like, oh, it definitely works. I see it in my clients every day. I saw it in my own self, So do you find that similar? You might get some pushback sometimes.
I tend to recognize clients who have that skepticism as being a part of their own trauma. So of usually having a lot of responsibility on their own shoulders, so much so that they really need to adhere to a system of very rational, very logical, very material, understandable things, because that's what they've had to do in order to survive, right? So I try to respect that right off the bat. And then I just also know that inherently the magic, there's no, listen, I work in IVF clinics. I've worked in all levels of reproductive medicine, and everything can be perfect with embryos and uterine lining and hormones can be, everything can be, cycles can go just as well as they possibly can, and could still not gain a conception and a successful pregnancy. And this is the same way if you're conceiving biologically, naturally, like as far as like in any way that you do it, it doesn't, there's a spark that has to be there. It has to be divine timing. And so regardless of your, and this is, my Western doc friends also, we all agree with this, like there's just something infinitely magic about how a person is brought onto the planet, regardless if they come through the door or the window, right?
Right.
So I find it to be my job then in that space to hear what's actually going on for them, which is, I've had a really hard life. I don't have much extra room for this, or I'm really afraid that if I actually do listen to spirit or spirituality and it doesn't happen, then I'll be even more devastated, right? So that then just becomes my job to help work through what that is for people. And so they can have, all of the tools and be able to go to, all the places within the possibility of conceiving.
I completely agree. And the fertility journey, like you talk about, is a mind, body, spirit. So we have to have all three of those components, kind of nurtured for it to really create that magical spark.
That's
so
true.
I completely agree. Well, I love this conversation, but we do have to take a short break to hear a word from our sponsors. We're going to come back in and I want to dive into more tips from your book, things that people can start doing today to maybe tap into that spiritual fertility. So we'll be right back. Hey y'all, it's Coach Kayla here. I hope you are loving this episode as much as I am. We will be back in just a minute, but first, a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L.E Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and the business of coaching. Whether you're struggling to get pregnant with pesky hormone symptoms, or you're working to build a career in the fertility and women's health space, we have you covered. Visit our website at www.coachkayla.com to learn more on how we can help you. Text the keyword fertility to 615-257-8855 for your free fertility meal plan. Hey, Dr. Julie, welcome back.
Hi.
So let's talk practical tips. What are maybe, 3 or 4 things that you recommend your clients, maybe people that are just starting to tap into this spiritual fertility, and maybe 1 or 2 things that people that have been on the journey can do to up level what they're currently doing?
It's this is why I wrote a book, because I can't sometimes come down to like what the easy tools are exactly, but there are many that are very I think, again, like the contraction expansion, the golden passport that I just explained is kind of the essence of everything. So between that and what I think right now, like if I'm looking at what I know of the clients who I have, the patients I've worked with in the past, my friends, myself, my family, what I know as far as what's going on right now as we're all recovering from a very stressful period of time on the planet. And many of us are still in the, the after effects of that and what it's done. And for some people, it's been a wonderful window of change, and for others, it's been really, really hard economically, financially, fear. People have lost family and friends. So I think, given what we've gone through as a planet, the tip that I feel is most important right now in the realm of spiritual fertility is really taking the space and time to look at and try to manage and heal to the best ability, trauma. Trauma means wound in the Greek. And it's just the places where we have been hurt and where things have been really difficult. And we've had to just pull our bootstraps up to get through it, or like put our, grown up faces on, but still underneath, again, the triggers are the guides. And sometimes what we've all been just living through is echoing or has brought up things from our own childhood or from earlier on, or things that are problematic in our relationships. I think so. It's very important for me. The two most important things when it comes to fertility, protecting and preserving and empowering fertility from my perspective, is that like looking at and healing to the best of your ability trauma. And unconditional love is the second one. Unconditional love for yourself, but also unconditional love for your future children. And I feel like this is a place where a lot of people can be a little conditional or run a little short on time, So again, it's an opportunity to dig in and to look for places where you can choose the open heart, and choose the expansive path. So, but for folks who already have been on the journey of using tools or already have that in their background, I think, one of the things that I'm always trying to remind all of my patients of is that at the end of the day, you are your own best healer. There's no authority out there who knows or holds or has more access to you than you do. And I think that this is a place also as women that we can tend to be a little bit where our training basically, or where our society's expectations can keep us from sometimes speaking up and saying what we find to be true or what our experience has been. And I think it's a very important place. So even on either side of the aisle, so to speak, of where you land on the spiritual aspect of fertility, advocacy for your own intuition and your experience and your voice is a spiritual practice. And it's also a practice, and it's one to remember, especially if you are privileged enough to have good healthcare and enough of a empowerment or education to know how to speak up. It's important to do this because it means we also are impacting all the other people on the planet who maybe don't have as much privilege. So I find that to be one of the things within the realm of spirituality that is, it's definitely on the table right now. Everyone in the world of the world of spirituality and the publishing industry in general, it's a really important thing to remember that it's no longer okay just to do these things just for yourself and your own enlightenment or to have your own child and your own family. It's really important to keep in mind that we are all unified, right?
And I think that's a really important point that you just mentioned is we do need to be our own advocates, and we intuitively know ourselves better than anyone else. So if a medical professional is telling you something, or if somebody's telling you something about your journey and you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't fit with what I feel in my body, then it's okay to speak up. It's okay. Be your own advocate and stand up for yourself. And that's exactly what I did. I was told because I was 36 years old that I needed to do IVF to get pregnant. And I was like, but wait a minute, there's nothing medically wrong with me. So why do I have to do that? Nothing to take away from those procedures. I knew it would be there if I needed it, but at that point in my life, I wasn't ready for that. And I'm so glad I had the voice to stand up and say no. So I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Well, it seems like it's definitely been a part of your path too. You continue to stand up, right? And you're part of your mission and your education. So
Exactly. Yeah. This is what I was put on this planet to do. I know deep down in my soul and my heart for sure. Yeah. So let's talk about that spirit baby. You talk about calling your spirit baby into your womb. So how do we do that? Is there a few things that maybe we need to know to start that practice?
Sure. Well, again, it's very much about, at the end of the day, like my practice is always about the empowerment and healing of my patient, not of their future children, right? So the calling in idea for me is about coming into balance with the nervous system. And so you can really listen and create a stronger connection and voice for your own intuition. Mm-hmm. And within that, there's several practices that I recommend after we get that kind of clarity, right? Of like balancing the nervous system, trying to remove the pollution of the narratives you've inherited, or the narrative about time and society, or the trauma from your grandmother's insistence that you were going to have the same exact experience of miscarriage that she did, because that's how it was always told to you. You know, you have to remove first this pollution. And this is what I talk about with the trauma aspect. So, but after we get to a place, and that your nervous system is really the guide there, because if you're like, sometimes people are like, well, how am I supposed to find out that kind of trauma? And we'll just, once we start really paying attention to the nervous system, and you get into a place of honesty with it, instead of just like, a lot of our nervous systems are just running on overdrive and almost like automatic pilot. So that's step one, right? How do we break those patterns? And then after that, and we remove some of the pollution that gets in the way of us staying in that space, then listening and channeling even becomes a very, it's natural. I mean, it is natural because it's everyone's right. It exists within all of us. It's not some people who are especially extremely, like I've been speaking the language of intuition and spirituality with intensity for a long time. I've been practicing, and that's all it takes. And I kind of have like an advanced degree in the linguistics of it, but that isn't, but I can still, so anybody has access to it though. So I talk about tools of using dream work. I talk about tools of using music and poetry, of all kinds of things in the book. But I hesitate to say that there's one way to do it, because there are many. And the core is, again, like, as I just said, like coming back into even clearing the space. I like to help guide when it is difficult for people, which does happen, even after they've cleared the space and they're in their intuitive listening. And then, so I'll remember a story of somebody saying like, well, I've done your work, Dr. Vaughn. I've gone to these other womb clearing rituals. I've done spirit baby workshops, and I don't hear anything. What does that mean? You know, does that mean there's nobody there for me? Is that what that means? And I think that that's what a lot of people, again, are sometimes afraid of when hesitant about looking into using the spiritual energy. But my answer to that is, it's just people, different personalities have totally different energies. You know, like think about a party. Sometimes the person who gets there at like 5 minutes till it's supposed to start helps you do everything and lays it out and is wonderful, and it's like shows up right on time with force. Right. And then sometimes like somebody comes in later and you didn't even know they were there until the end of the night, and you see them as they leave. Sometimes the party is just about to end and somebody shows up, boom, with the biggest energy ever and keeps it going for another 2 or 3 hours, right? So this is the same as the energy of people, of personalities, and of course your future children. It's something that it just means that some energies are bigger and louder and easier to feel and know, and some just need more reassurance and more unconditional love. They need that time. They need your own expectations and desires to start, being shimmied off a little bit. They want to make sure that they're going into a place where they're going to be loved unconditionally. So that's when you get really tested.
Yes, I love that. Well, tell us more about you. Where can we find your book? Where can we find you and learn more about working with you?
Oh, thank you. So my book is here. This is what it looks like. There you go. It's with Hay House. It came out. It's you can get it on Barnes and Noble or Amazon, or your local bookstore should have it too. It's called Spiritual Fertility. It's available on my website, which is drjulievaughn.com. I have a lot of different offerings on my website these days. I'm really excited about, I was trained as an herbalist, and I've been doing a lot of botanical medicine. I've done a lot of botanical medicine in my fertility treatments over the years. Mm-hmm. So one thing I'm really excited about is I've been doing custom herbal consults with people around the world now and shipping out specific herbal formulas to them. Oh, wow. But I'm launching my own herbal line completely starting in January of 2022. And part of it is going to be sort of some of the best and strongest and highest quality fertility potions that I use and have found are going to be a part of that. So that's also going to be available on my website. But I'm really fired up about that because it's so herbal medicine is empowering when you get it right and you learn about it, and it's just wonderful. And when it works, it really works. So that's something that's coming out, which I'm really excited about, and I'm going to work on like every moment of the next 2 months.
I love it. I can't wait to see that. That's going to be amazing. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Julie, for coming on. I would love any final thoughts you have, anything you want to leave us with, words of encouragement or words of inspiration.
Sure. Well, it's all about timing, not time.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah. We fall in love when we're young, and even though it's almost perfect, really good, it's just not right. And so we move on, and then sometime it is right. And why is that? Right? There's something about something bigger, kind of cosmic air traffic control, I like to call it, that's behind the scenes happening. And I think it's, especially when we're ready to have children and it's not happening when we want, it's really easy to forget about that. But it's sort of also really important to remember that timing and divine timing is everything.
I completely agree. I love it. Well, thanks again, Dr. Julie. It's been so fun. Thank you for being here.
Wonderful. Wonderful to be here. Thanks so much.
And thank you, ladies, for listening to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Until next time, bye. Hey, hang on just 1 second before you go. I want to make sure that you are aware of all of the amazing free resources that I have for you on my website at coachkayla.com. From a fertility meal plan, a cycle syncing quick start guide, a holistic healing cookbook, as well as master classes, blog posts by me and some amazing experts in the fields of fertility, hormones, and nutrition. So many wonderful resources that will help you on your journey. And I wish there had been something like this when I was going through my 2 years of infertility, but there just wasn't. And so that's why I decided to create all of this for you. So make sure that you go and check it out and you take advantage of this plethora of support that I have provided for you. And spoiler alert, these were some of the same tricks and the same foods that I used to get myself pregnant, not once, but twice, even after my doctors said that I couldn't. So I know that these things work. So make sure you take advantage of that. And I cannot wait for you to be my next success story. So thanks, love. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in today to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Check out the show notes for today's episode at coachkayla.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next week.